Guinan's uncle Turkham was the only member of her family with a sense of humor. Geordie and Barclay show off their Michael Jackson gloves. And Chief Miles Edward O'Brien says, damn it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 3, Episode 21 already. Whoa, where does the time go? Hollow Pursuits, written by Sally Caves. It's a little familiar. Directed by Cliff Bole, of course. This was April 28th, 1990. Where were you and your windbreaker? How you doing today, Cirroc?
And your MC Hammer pants or something.
Mm-mm.
I'm good. I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing just fine. When you said the MC Hammer pants, I just pictured that dance. You know, where he's like, oh, oh,
Yeah.
oh, oh, oh.
Do you remember those pants? Those like
Oh yeah,
parachute pants?
of course.
Was it in like I thought it was around that time period,
Yeah, oh
around
yeah,
like
that was
early
right around
90s.
Hammer time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, stop.
Uh,
Hammer. Okay.
okay. I make that. Uh, but yeah, that was the time. And then they also used to have those hats, and it was the time period when you would flip your hat up like this. You remember that time period?
Yes, I do actually. That did not last. That was like one, maybe 2 years. And then after that, there
Yeah.
was kind of the curling the bill of the hat. You remember that?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, I
That was
do.
fun.
I
Wow,
do
I
remember
forgot
that.
about
But
the flipping up of the hat. Wow.
yeah, there was
I'm gonna
that
do
flip
that.
up of the
People will think I'm real
hat.
cool when I walk into the
Yeah.
Kmart with my thing up and my
We are saved by
sandals.
the bell look.
I haven't been in a Kmart since the 80s, I think. Do they still exist? Is that a thing? Or is it like Toys R Us?
I haven't seen one. I haven't seen one. I think it's gone. Yeah.
Unless we're talking about basketball player.
Oh.
Everybody knows
Wait,
Kmart,
well, let me segue because we got to get back on the Star Trek.
please. Because you know what? I love this episode. I was so happy to watch this episode.
This is my question for you because I didn't even really do much real homework on this. I just feel like I know this off the top of my head. Tell me that's not the guy from the 18. No, I can't hear you. Yes?
Cirroc Lofton, this is why we love you. It is Murdoch from the A
Yes.
Team. Yes,
Yes.
playing two
Yes.
completely different characters, right?
Oh my God. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my God, it's Murdoch. How did Murdoch end up on Star Trek? That's all I could say to myself. I was like, because he's so fun to watch on the A Team. I'm thinking this is like the A Team on Star Trek. It's one of the great. I was just waiting for a B.A. Baracus or some Mr. T to come
Yeah.
out of the back.
Da, 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 da,
Or at
da,
least
da,
I
da.
love it when a plan comes together,
Yes,
you know,
Hannibal.
little cameo line, something like that. But
Okay, so
very good, very
Picard
good.
would be Hannibal, right? I love it when a plan comes together, right?
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
what do we got? Maybe in this episode, Geordi would have to be B.A. Baracus, right? Worf kind of has
Yeah,
his
yeah,
his beef, but BA was actually not that tall, so Geordi's could be a good
yeah.
one. And then who?
Plus, he
Oh,
gold out that he's got the gold visor, and let's put some chains
just
on.
drop it down, and then
Yeah,
Riker would have to be face, but he'd have to shave again.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
Man,
Uh,
I bet that's
that
out there
that
somewhere
whatever.
already.
That's got to be so. Somebody had to do the mirror universe of this episode.
Yeah.
I wonder if Sally Caves wrote for the 18 because it was just too good to be true for me. Uh, and Murdoch, man, I always knew he was a good actor because he's good at playing slightly off a little bit, like this kind of
Yep.
that Murdoch character was like kind of half crazy, right? You didn't know what the hell he was thinking or about to do. And everybody looked at him like, oh, that's me, Murdoch. But he was a little bit like touched in some type of way. And I felt like he played this character a version of that. Not necessarily touched, but just like somebody who has this inner conflict that he's dealing with. And I thought that was just
Totally.
like perfectly executed.
Hmm. So I remember when I first started watching Star Trek, I was like, I really liked Barclay because he's a really smart guy. He's just a weirdo, you know? And you always kind of root for that kind of character. You always go like, this guy's gonna, because he's got that untapped potential and you want them to unlock that potential. And I just would always really like him and root for him. Plus, it's Murdoch, of course. So it's so cool. Great character actor, Dwight Schultz. Um, so I wanted to ask you though, Cirroc,
Yeah.
did you laugh in this episode? Did it make you laugh when it opened up and it's just got Guinan saying, "Hey, I don't want any trouble," and Barclay says, "I don't know what you mean." She's like, "Wherever you go, trouble follows." Did you know right away, okay, there's some kind of weird holodeck, or were you like, what the hell's going on?
Oh yeah, no, right away I knew that this was some kind of, we were in somebody's dream, a holodeck, somebody's fantasy. I just didn't know whose. I wasn't quite sure from whose perspective this was taking place, but once I saw Murdoch, I mean, it just already kind of, I don't know, there's this like deep breath that you take where you relax and you're like, okay, don't take this too serious. Enjoy
Mm,
yourself. He's going to make this fun to watch. There's a certain way that it's like a comfort zone when you watch certain actors perform. I think Chevy Chase does it.
mm.
When I watch Chevy Chase, there's like oh man, I'm just going to enjoy myself and let myself laugh and enjoy whatever's going to happen. Um, Three's Company, where Jack Tripper kind of had that charm about himself too, where you were like, all right, this is going to be fun. Let me just not take everything too serious and
Now
enjoy the ride. So
you're talking about my idol, Mr. Jack Tripper, right there, by the way.
yeah, and just there's this like comfort zone. There's this, you let your guard down and enjoy the ride. So when I saw him, I thought this is going to be one of those fun episodes. And I gotta say, I laughed so much in this episode. I couldn't believe it. This is probably number one on my rewind list of how
Nice.
many moments I rewound and just had to watch over and over again because I was laughing my ass off. It was hilarious. It was
I
hilarious.
I did a lot too. You know when I did it when I rewound the most, where I wanted to eat my screen. I just wanted to like just chew on it in a good way, like Worf does with books. Is I want was when Picard calls Barclay broccoli. And
Oh
he
my
goes,
God.
and
Yes.
first, because Picard's trying to be super nice, he's like, "Oh, very good. Oh, yes, yes." And he's like, "Oh, very good. Thank you, Mr. Broccoli." And then he's like trying to be Mr. Broccoli. And he's trying to forcing this, it looks like a painful smile, and then his eyes go, "Oh shoot, what did I just do?" And even funnier than his reaction was Riker's nonverbal communication. Riker is the most
Yes.
impish because
Yes.
he's when Broccoli's talking, he's going like this, and then he looks at Picard like, "See what I mean? Like, see what he's doing this kind of thing, like,
Yeah.
see." And then when Picard says broccoli, Riker goes like,
His eyes.
and then the third one was when afterwards when Captain Picard goes, "Oh, Barclay," and then Riker goes
Yes.
back to like laughing at him. He's like, dude, the facial reactions and nonverbal
Yes.
communication from Jonathan
Yes.
Frakes is magical. And I
Yeah.
keep thinking he's an act. I always thought this.
Yeah.
He was an actor
Yeah.
that acted like a director. He acted as if
Yeah.
he knew the big picture of what the director's going to want, what the audience is going to focus on. He is just like the seasoning for that steak of that scene, I thought.
Yeah, he does what the audience wants is feeling, right? So
Yeah.
he plays that mirror of the audience. So it's like as the audience, like, did this dude just say that? But I want to give credit to Patrick Stewart too, because the way he played that scene, the way he felt embarrassed but kept his poise and act like he didn't. It's like when you fall down, you act like you didn't fall down, and you kind of try to play it off moment. He tried to play it off, and it was great. It's the way he held his facials. It was like Barclay, and just the bounce of forth between the way he was trying to play it off and the way Jonathan Frakes was giving facial reactions. The contrast there was just, that's what makes Star Trek. Those are the funny moments between cast members, between characters, that you feel like, oh, this is why I like this show, because of these kinds of moments. This is, I get these characters enough to know that he wants to be the captain doesn't want to have any flawed, embarrassing moments. So anytime he finds himself in an embarrassing moment, we love it. And Riker rubs it in his face. So it's perfect.
Yeah.
But I had a funnier moment though. Not a funnier moment, but another funny moment.
All right, let's hear it.
And my other funny moment is when Murdoch / Barclay, when Barclay was inside of inside of Counselor Troy's office, and she's like, "Have you ever been with a counselor before?"
Yes,
and he was like,
yes, that was killer. And I missed that the other times I watched this episode. I only caught it this time. I was like, "Wait a second, what did I just hear?"
It was the best because he says yes, no.
No. Well, not a real one.
Oh my God. The way he says yes and then catches it and says no. I thought it was one of the greatest moments I've ever seen. It just like but by the way, this episode brought up one of the best debates that I've ever heard, not fully expanded upon. And this is what we really got to get into too. Holodeck protocol.
Yep. Rights.
The rights.
The rights of the people that these programs are based off of. It was touched upon in Deep Space Nine, right? With Major Kira and some guy that was trying. Yeah, the sex tape. Yeah, so but this came first. So this was more like planting that seed, right? And they don't really get into the moral
but code. They bring it up.
Yeah. So that's why Deep Space Nine got into it a little bit more deeply, because here they're just acting shocked, but they're not actually discussing whether it's right or wrong, the moral implications of it, whether it's legal.
Well, Riker says it should be. Yeah. I think they said it's not illegal or something, and he's like, "Well, it should be. Like this is ridiculous, right?" And that actually is interesting because it gets directly into a debate that we're having this moment in time with AI
and using our likeness, yes,
and using likeness.
Yep, that's
almost exactly what's happening right now. So it's like, because when you see your likeness used in compromising things, and things that you wouldn't exactly sign up for, it has a reaction. There is a reaction. It caused one in both Riker. It caused one in Troy. They had a kind of visceral reaction to seeing a likeness of them that they didn't necessarily approve.
Yeah. Well, Riker was pretty funny, but that was a nice little exchange where she's like, belay that order, and then when Deanna Troi sees her goddess of empathy, which, by the way, she acted the hell out of that. I was like, would she really be that shocked? I mean, maybe. It's pretty bad, but she was like, all right, that's it. I am going to go nuts on this guy. And then Riker gets back. He's like, belay that order. No, we got to see what.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is, we don't want to see ourselves being used without our permission. That's it. Especially not in whatever fantasies going on. Now, what we saw on the screen was rather harmless, But what was implied in the yes no situation was that it was less than harmless. It was much, much worse than that. And that after all the sleepy naps and the cuddles and all this, then, he's like, so anyway, let's go jump in these bushels here and so on.
Yeah. What happened with those bushels?
Let's jump behind this hilly brush.
Speaking of that, I was laughing my ass off when I know Riker had the funnest time doing this episode, because of the one line he had that I could not even believe was said, and of course Riker's the one who says it in this episode. But they call for the other number one on the Three Musketeers or whatever it is, and he comes running up and he says, "Am I late? Am I late?" or something. And he says, "Oh, what I like this." He says, "Is it possible our swords crossed somewhere before?" I was thinking, did they talk about? Did Riker ask other Riker if their swords have crossed? How ridiculous is that? I could not believe I was watching that. How did they get away with this particular entendre into this particular episode?
I think it's an old saying. I hope it's an old saying. Otherwise, Sandy Caves, you got some things to say.
Explaining to do. Yeah.
Sally Caves. Sorry, Sally Caves. Who, by the way, if her name sounds familiar, it's because we have reviewed her other Star Trek episode, which is Season 1, Episode 5 of Deep Space Nine, Babel or Babel. People pronounce it differently. Episode 5, fifth episode of Deep Space Nine, story by. But that's it from her. I was hoping there'd be more because that was pretty good stuff. I laughed throughout this whole episode. There were so many written gems. And I can't help but wonder if when the actors saw this script, if they really get up for it. Maybe some of them, I don't know, might look and be like, oh, we're doing comedy. I thought this was a serious show. I thought this was, but I feel like most of them, when they read this, they're like, this is hilarious. This is great. I can't wait to let loose and stretch out my comedy muscle a bit, especially like Picard. Oh, big surprise. Picard gets to play an Englishman again, like, oh, so say thee, and doing all this stuff, I'm like, he and Brent Spiner love that stuff, but I don't know. What do you think? That stuff. Do you think they saw that script and went nuts?
Yeah, because this looks like a Patrick Stewart kind of, this is appeasing his pretty much what his likes are and dislikes. So this goes into his getting to chance to dress up, and I guess it was a Three Musketeer, like I said, kind of playoff. So at least that's what it felt, the period of, or the costume design. So they didn't specifically mention it, but I had that vibe. And just to play, dress up with the sword and the mustaches and, it seems like something that is up Patrick Stewart's alley. It's something that he would be interested in doing. So I think for that one, it placates to their strong points of what they love doing in this kind of grandiose performance. And it's almost kind of overacting, style of performing. So yeah, I thought they were having a whole lot of fun doing it. And I think also, from my own perspective, when you get to play a character outside of the character you always already play, you have this creative freedom to play some more. And I think that's one of the reasons why Far Beyond the Stars was such a good episode on DS9, because not only was it just telling this very important story about Black people and their struggles in that period, but it's also reflecting the kind of same characters we already know, and taking them and stripping them out of the elements that we already see them in and letting them play in a different kind of storyline. Of course, Dixon Hill and all of that stuff is another form of it. But whenever you get the chance to do that, you get to have fun. And I think that's what was happening on the set. You could tell they're having a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that Patrick Stewart was interested in doing, Beverly Crusher also had what? Beverly Crusher also had an interesting scene. Although she and Worf didn't have much to do because in a script like this, when you're adding in new characters, some others have to kind of fall back, right?
Yeah.
Crusher, I feel like she was only in one or two scenes. Worf, I thought Worf had the week off until we saw him at the end. He had like one line or something, so he basically had the week off. But then we got a lot more Guinan, some
He
great
did
moments.
steal the show in a moment though, because when the whole thing was going down and there were like 15 seconds, he did one of these, the warp panic.
Yes, yes, the patented Worf concern, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was
Uh,
like, the guy they bring it in for one day and he's got to go to the go-to
yeah,
5 seconds.
yeah, he's got to knock it out of the park. He's like, hey, I got one half day on Friday. Let me
That's
knock this
it.
thing out. I'm all stretched out and ready to go. Yeah, but Guinan got a little bit more. We got some Chief O'Brien, a little more
Yeah.
expansion there. We got a new character in Barclay. We also got a lot of Lieutenant Duffy. Lieutenant Duffy had a lot of lines, and now I'm curious. I'm like, wait, did it, do we see more of Duffy? Because I feel like I remember his name. I feel like I remember his character, but maybe I'm just imagining it. Let me check real quick because it actually, let's take a super quick break. And when
Yeah.
we get right back in just a moment, we will reveal what's up with Duffy because I do remember a McDuff. There was Commander McDuff. So that's a different guy. We'll
See,
be
I
right.
only know Duffy as a beer from The Simpsons, I think, but
Yep.
is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is it Duffy or is it? Yeah, it's Duffy. I can see
I
it
think it's
too. It's like
Duffy.
a
Yeah.
square thing in
Yeah.
the kind of diagonal.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
think
we'll
it's
be
a
right
beer. Yeah.
back on. No, maybe it's Duff. I think it's just Duff
Is it Duff?
beer.
Okay.
Boy, so many mysteries. We'll be right back
All right.
on the seventh rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc frickin' Lofton,
Hello.
Duff beer drinker, cool guy. Here are the trivioids of the week. Commander Riker is nothing but a pretty mannequin in a fancy uniform. Barclay needs to report to Cargo Bay 5. Wesley calls Barclay broccoli. The Enterprise, that was cute when Picard said, when he's like, oh, that's what Wesley Crusher calls him. It's kind of caught on. And Picard goes, make it uncaught. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was pretty good. The
I like it.
Enterprise has taken on a load of special tissue samples donated by the Michalaks for shipment to Mommy 4. What? It's
Yeah.
a tough
No,
one.
I have some stuff to say about that.
Chief about the load of special sample tissue. Um,
No, the Michalaks, but Nami
Michalak
4.
Light. Okay. Ultra,
Tastes
Michalak
great.
Ultra. Captain Gleason spoke highly of Lieutenant Barclay. Chief Miles Edward O'Brien says, damn it. Counselor Troy is the goddess of empathy. Geordi invites Barclay to a mission briefing. Metathesis is one of the most common of pronunciation errors. Guinan reminds us that warm milk helps you sleep. Guinan's uncle Turkham was the only member of her family with a sense of humor, and Geordi and Barclay show off their new Michael Jackson gloves. I hope you noticed those Michael Jackson gloves because that was serious. There's no way
Oh
that.
no, I was thinking of the metathesis part. That was the line that had me laughing right now. Because when Data says that, it's funny because there was an unwritten "shut up, Data"
Yeah, he
that
just
kind of
stopped.
takes place. He
He's
just he out of
learning.
me.
He's becoming more human every day.
That was an unspoken "shut up, Data." It was perfect. Or that's enough, Data. It was perfect. I almost heard it without hearing it. So I love that cue that Data plays because he goes right in from that to like looking at the screen like, oh, I see that you don't want to hear this. This is
Yeah.
it's enough of that, I
And
guess.
Data actually showed, well, Brent Spiner actually showed pity on his face when Broccoli walks away and Data was like, metathesis, like he looks sad for Picard. And he's like, I know, I'll save him. And Picard's like, don't. He's acting right there. Yeah, there was so many good moments.
Yeah, this is good moments. This had me rolling. I'm telling you, I got smiley face emojis all over my paper here. Um, Another great. What's the guy's name? His name is Dwight something.
Dwight
the
Schultz.
one who plays Dwight Schultz. Okay, yeah. Dwight Schultz. My God, the way he plays, having this anxiety, this kind of nervousness about public speaking, or kind of being, the one who's called on, and the awkwardness he kind of plays is so amazingly well played. When he's sitting there with Counselor Troy and he says, it's like, the moments when not knowing what to do with your hands, that just saying that, like not knowing what to do with your hands. I thought that was very well.
I thought,
you know what I mean?
I thought the line right after that was maybe one of the most brilliant lines I've ever heard in Star Trek.
Thank you.
To the point that I remember it I knew, I was like, oh, this is the scene when he says, pretending to be interested in a potted plant or something, pretended to be enjoying examining a potted plant or something. I'm like, almost everybody on this planet totally felt that line. Like, you understand, you go into a party or a social gathering or something, and you're like, you got to pretend like, oh boy, I'm just really interested in this painting. It's not that nobody's talking to me. It's that, man, this is that is such a good line. And there were a lot of beautifully written lines. And I feel like,
well, right before that, he says, I'm the guy who writes down things to remember what to say when I'm at the parties or something. Like, like practicing bringing up small talk. You know what I mean? Like, that's a real thing. And people always have that kind of anxiety. For example, somebody they like and they want to ask them out, but they're practicing what the line is going to be, and it could be a long amount of time that going on just for them to try to rehearse the courage enough to speak and say things. So I think that was well done as far as kind of dealing with that particular mental health aspect, the anxiety and feelings that he had. I thought was well described and well acted by Dwight.
I have a feeling that this is going to be an episode that ages well, because more and more people, I think, are going to see the beauty in this kind of episode. I feel like maybe in 1990, a lot of people are looking at it like, oh, it's a funny episode, geeky weirdo guy, or, nervous Nelly or something like that. But there are a lot of people that saw themselves in Barclay, or there are a lot of people that recognize certain things, or really there was just, the writing was beautiful. There was a lot of amazing lines in here. And I feel like there are going to be a lot of people that just really appreciated it.
I can't stop laughing because this was really one of my favorite episodes. I'll tell you another moment that had me laughing is he's in the office with Troy, and she says, "Does it make you uncomfortable, the thoughts of being with a counselor?" And he was like, "Not at all." And he kind of
it's like,
and he does this weird, like, uncomfortable stance like this.
And then when he's so uncomfortable that the guy that's just trying to sneak out of there so bad, because he's like, that's right, I'm loving this.
He was killing me when he did that. He was like, no, not at all. I'm totally comfortable. Like, watching him do that, I was like busting out laughing. And then she was like, now breathe into the nose. And like another moment that had me laughing, because I thought, how many times have people told you to breathe like into the nose? And you're like, yeah, I get it. It's like, yeah, I get that, but it's like, it's not helping me. I got 1,000 things in my mind, right? But the way he plays it off, he's like, yes, in.
He's like, oh, I got it. That's it. Perfect. Thank you. I guess I gotta go because I'm cured. This is it. I'll just breathe. Yeah, here we go. it was perfect. And the actors got it. The actors understood the material. You know what I mean? Like you could tell that they all took this great material and they took it to the next level. They really
Yes.
sold it. And it's just there was
Oh my God.
yeah, I'm so glad you enjoyed this because I
Oh
love the
man.
shit out of it.
It was just it was just too much for me. I I loved it. And then, Whoopi also played a really important role as far as not being the person to pile on to like downing this character. I like that she brought perspective, and that's like the wisdom that she has. She didn't just like say, oh yeah, what an idiot, and just add to the fuel to the fire about this guy. She actually spoke up and defended a personality type like that, which is another level of, to me, an intelligent storytelling, what Star Trek is good at, which is
Hmm.
speaking up and defending the rights of people who don't necessarily have a voice. It's easy to just ostracize this character and make fun of him and say, oh, yeah, he doesn't fit in with us. He's not cool. But instead, it was more like the effort that Picard was making, which is, hey, try to make him feel comfortable, reach out to him. Like that to me is a sign of intelligence, like try to reach out to him and draw out the best out of him and see what it is and get to know the guy that you're working with. And further than that was Guinan like being able to use a reference point and saying, hey, I know somebody like this, and I know these are the type of ways that they act. And she actually brought up the idea of imagination, which became clear
Totally.
in his holodeck kind of scene, right? It was imagination. He has a rich imagination.
And she had a great line when she said, hey, if I knew nobody wanted to be around me, I'd probably be late and nervous too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a golden line right there. It's true. I mean, if you thought that you were going to a place where nobody wanted you, you would show up late. You wouldn't feel comfortable when you were there. So it's just a change of perspective. And then of course, Shorty says, that's not the point. And she gives that Guinan line of, isn't it? You know, and
And
yep.
it was great, very well written. Another moment that I thought along the lines of what you're talking about, which is just like defending the right thing to do, was when the nickname came up and Data says broccoli. It says, I thought nicknames were clandestinely, something used as, something positive. I forgot.
Yeah.
I
In
didn't write.
camaraderie amongst friends.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Nicknames denote, oh, yeah, yeah, fondness,
Hmm.
and that's when Jordy's like, yeah, you know what? He's right. Captain's orders, anyways. We're not going to do that anymore, which is great too. I think it's like, yeah, you get a nickname. It should be a nickname that you can include the person in on, not a nickname that when they're around, you can't say it. So,
It's done out of love, man. You know, like
yeah,
I feel like anybody that receives a nickname should have veto power on it, you know?
yeah,
And if
yeah.
if it's coming at them negatively, they might be like, I don't like this nickname. And if you're not
It should
telling
be
them the
something they
nickname,
owe
then
themselves. Like it's
mhm.
like something that they adopt themselves. If it's a nickname, you know what I mean? It's like people say, hey, yeah, when I was a kid, my mom used to call me this, and now I'm known as this. That's fine because that's something was prescribed lovingly, and is also something that is adopted by you yourself. So it's something that you kind of identify yourself as. So I thought that those were great points to hit on how to be good friends and have a good crew of Starfleet
Mhm.
officers working together,
Yeah.
concerned about each other's mental health.
Here's
So
another
that's a good
thing.
idea.
Here's another thing that I really love with Star Trek, and I really love about this episode. Couple things. One is I loved to see Geordi in command and his crew. First of all, it's just good to give him some love. It's good to show him
Yeah.
in the top position of his field. He is the top guy in all of engineering on a ship of like 1,000 people. Okay, so that's
You're talking
cool.
about that meeting that he has when he calls everyone together and he's kind of asking for ideas.
That's it. I mean, he's chief engineer, and we finally get to see him be chief engineer. Otherwise, he's just being the representative of engineering on the bridge, but I want to see him be in charge of the highest engineering crew, right?
Yeah.
So that's great. I love to see that. Also because it gives us a day in the life. We like to see, what is it like outside of the bridge? What's it like, what do they do in the morning? They have their morning coffee and they talk about their day, the day ahead and what they're going to do. And I love that kind of slice of life thing. And it paints Geordi in such a positive light, even though he was a terrible manager at first with Barclay, but then he gets better and he learns with us. We are Geordi in this case. We're learning with him, Sorry, go on.
Yeah, about how to deal with people's different personality traits. This could be somebody that's on the autistic spectrum or some kind of other kinds of issues. So yeah, I think they did a very good job of acknowledging that. But I wanted to talk about the scene where Geordi's in that space where he's the leader of his crew. That had the most technobabble I've seen so far, I think, exchange wise, in one scene, because there was just a moment there where I was just listening for the degree of difficulty of saying these lines.
Yeah. And what's funny is that was when I said there's two things, that was the other one. Because the technobabble, sure, the fact that Geordi can spit it out so fast, I'm like, bro, you must practice those lines hard because he's just blah, 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 blah. But the fact that they all work together is such a Star Trek thing where somebody says, oh, I've got a working theory. What about this? What about that? What's going on here? And then they start kind of working it together. Then the bridge calls them up and Geordi's like, hang on, we got a working theory coming. And we're like with them. We're like, come on, Geordi, come through, use your teammates. And it was so beautiful. It's such a Star Trek scene. That was an A+ scene for me.
Me too. Because by the way, even Wesley showed some sensitivity to it after he was kind of briefed about. He's like, "Oh, I was insensitive by shutting him down and not, letting him have an opportunity to fully kind of flesh out his idea. And instead, I just kind of like, no, that won't work. This is because of this, that, and the third." So, also great ways to communicate. Like this is a lesson on communication and being sensitive to other people, being empathy. Also, I wanted to ask you about what is the protocol on walking in on my holodeck moves?
Yes, you got to knock.
Seriously, there's got to be a doorbell. There's got to be like a, you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I completely agree. I was like, guys, his ethics are in question with what he's doing, but also your ethics are in question with what you're doing. I get that they're superior officers. I get that it's important. But still,
if you know somebody's in the bathroom,
I know
you got to knock on the door first and be like, "Yo, it's important, bro. I need to talk to you."
Even if he's late, even if he's 7 minutes late, you don't just walk into the bathroom, man.
I know. So there has to be a doorbell. There has to be like you press the button and the program glitches for a second and tells you someone is at the door. And you're like, "Oh, okay, I gotta." Let me computer delete this seat because who knows what kind of program you're walking into,
Telling you, man.
So
we only have a few minutes left here, but I got a couple quick hits for you. One is when Riker says to delete little Riker and holodeck Picard says, "Sir, you have no sense of fair play." Like that was a gorgeous line. Also, Geordi had an improv little moment. I'm guessing it was improvised. It was when at the very end, when Barclay does something well or whatever, and then Geordi gives him a pat on the arm, and Barclay kind of, reacts a little happily. Geordi gives him a second pat, a harder one. And I'm like, I don't feel like that would be written in a script. Geordi gives Barclay a pat. Barclay reacts. Geordi gives another pat. That's not something somebody would write because that wouldn't work in a script. But I feel like that was one of those things where LeVar Burton was feeling it and he just kind of went with that moment or he did something to help Dwight get out of something. But whatever it was, he gave that one pat, and Barclay kind of reacts like, oh, I guess I'm not so bad. And then LeVar gives him a bigger, harder pat, kind of shaking him out of it, like going, yeah, buddy. And I really felt like that was a genuine moment that came out between those two actors, and it was improvised, and big ups to LeVar Burton for that. And then lastly, right, I mean, you think that's an improvised thing. That's not a script thing usually.
I would say that. I would say that's an improvised, the second one. Yeah. Yeah.
And then this last thing is the very good twist at the very end on the bridge. Maybe we see it coming, maybe we don't. I don't remember the first time I saw it, if I knew right away, but Barclay's saying goodbye to the bridge crew. And it feels like, or we're supposed to feel like, oh, he's being transferred. He's saying goodbye. And then when it turns out he's actually saying goodbye to his holodeck programs, but he's seeing them for who they are now. It's not just that he's grown up and saying goodbye to those holodeck programs, but he's also seeing the real world for what it is. We would have assumed that he's saying goodbye to them in fairy tale land, but he's saying goodbye to them for who they really are. And I thought that was a really smart choice by the writer.
Yeah, I liked it too. It made me also kind of think of the end of In the Pale Moonlight when Sisko says computer delete program.
Yep.
There was a kind of a callback there feeling wise for me when I saw that. I thought, oh wow, that's kind of the end tagline for for that episode of Deep Space Nine. So definitely had a great feeling about it. The whole episode was wonderful. I feel like the other actors really respect Dwight Schultz and were able to interact with him because of the level of respect they probably have for him as an actor and their familiarity with his work. Because it seemed like there was a real chemistry there.
He may have been an it guy back then. Yeah.
Yeah. So it feels like, they were really giving, as the young kids say today. But yeah, all around, man, this was just such a good episode. I mean, I like the costuming, even though, just the period piece costuming I thought was great. The lighting that was done in those like dream sequence shots, I thought the lighting was nice as well. It just gave me like a fantasy kind of feel to it. The pinks and peaches and the hues that totally. I felt color wise.
Yeah, good point.
So all around, really good episode for me. Do we ever see Reg Barclay again?
It's time for the home run of the episode, everybody. Time for the home run of the episode. Right. I will say we do see Reginald Barclay again.
I can't wait.
Is it an episode? Is it a movie? Maybe both. You never know. But
I can't wait.
Very quickly, who gets the home run of the episode for you, Mr. Cirroc Lofton?
Hands down, Dwight Schultz gets the. I mean, just he played the awkwardness. He played, he played all the notes. I think to make this episode just hit the way it was supposed to hit. He wasn't an idiot, you know what I mean? So it's not like he was, incompetent. He was just inexpressive. And I think those are very separate things. And I think, they kind of delineated that in this episode that, there's a difference between just failing because of incompetence and having communicative or social anxieties. And I think that was one of the big messages I took away. So yes, Dwight Schultz.
Very important point. It really is the message of the episode. And it's really important. It's really good. I agree. Dwight Schultz, he killed it. Secondarily, the writer, Sally Caves, nailed it.
Yeah.
So many gorgeous lines in there. So much brilliance. So beautiful. Great performances by LeVar Burton, Marina Sirtis, Patrick Stewart, Jonathan Frakes. I mean, it was really a very good episode for me all around. better than I remember it. When it came on, I was like, oh my God, are we already at this episode? I love this episode. This is so good. And it was even better than I expected. So people that are also better than expected are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Titus Mohler, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Goo, and Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, a.k.a. Crewman Guy, my live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie Manisfee, Greg K. Wickstrom, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, Chris Sternett, Johanna Yunker, Amiram Mizne, I hope I'm pronouncing that one correct, Lee, Nora Vega, Ed Jarrett, and Steve Case, a.k.a. Joe Bust. God, I can never get that guy. Steve Case, a.k.a. Joe Bugbuster, and of course,
there it is,
Jason Okun. I need a cigarette now. I don't even smoke. Everybody stick around. We got the free-for-all up next. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule. We just got done arguing about a bunch of stuff. And Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Let's start things off awkwardly. This is the free-for-all with Melissa Longo is here. Jason M. Okun is here. Allyson Leach-Heid, Delta Quad, Space Tour shirt. Howlin' Mad, Dark Lord McGee is here with his cool Seventh Rule shirt. Anil O. Polat is traveling somewhere, probably. Gregory Kenzo, Stembolt, and Chill. What's up, dude? Out in Hawaii. Faith Howell is on the bridge of the Enterprise. Then we've got Amiram Mizne is here.
Going.
In the Bay Area. Steve Case, a.k.a. Joe Bugbuster. By the way, that really threw me off when we were saying that in the last segment. I could not get that whole thing out. Chuck A., what's up? Cool shirt. TJ Jackson-Bey is here. He's going to troll us about basketball probably because that's what he likes. He likes to hurt my feelings about the Warriors. Carrie Schwent, a.k.a. Crafty Bear. She's got some flowers behind her for some reason.
It's purple broccoli.
Oh,
deep cut.
Wow. The Matt Boardman is here. He hates broccoli. The person or the vegetable? Stay tuned. All right. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Oh, well, I enjoyed this episode a lot. I hope everybody else did who watches on IMDb ratings. So I'm going to say an 8.7.
Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know what the score is on IMDb?
How about 8.5?
7.9.
I was thinking 7.2. Lower.
I was thinking 7.4. I liked the episode, but some of the holodeck stuff was so hokey. But we'll see what people thought of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say 8.6 just to mess with Cirroc.
Ooh.
Just go one lower.
That sounds like a Molokai kind of attitude right there. Am I right?
Yeah, maybe actually.
All right. The correct answer, of course, is I think it was. Oh, that's wrong. Where am I looking? I was looking at the wrong one. I was like, no, that is definitely not right. I know that's not it.
That's not the code of honor.
It's 7.7.
Not bad.
Interesting.
I would have given this, honestly, I would have given this thing a 9. I thought this was a great episode.
Same.
We'll see if it ages well. Melissa Long. Oh, did we have any non-appearance mentions in this episode?
Oh, I had a question about that. Does Leah Brahms count since that's who Geordi fell in love with?
No, I don't think so because he did not say a person.
Yeah, but that's who he was referring to.
He just said, I fell in love. If he said I fell in
In
love
the
with
holosuite.
someone, and he's mentioning her. If he says I fell in love with a lady, but if he just says I fell in love,
In the holosuite.
right, he was referring to her, but he certainly didn't mention a
Yeah.
person.
Maybe there's multiple women that he fell in love with. I don't know.
Okay.
It's like if he
I don't
said,
know.
it's like if he said, I had lunch yesterday. But he didn't, it's not I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's not a non-appearance mention for a burger.
I have no.
Well, yeah, but we've only seen him fall in love with Leah Brahms, and we know that's who he was referring to. So I kind of figured it
I
was
thought
kind
of
of
her.
like when somebody's Miles O'Brien says, well, the kids, or then we know my wife,
But if he's mentioning kids, then he's mentioning people.
okay.
But if he says, oh, I went home, are we to assume that he's mentioning his family because we know they live there? I don't know.
Yeah,
This
no,
is a
but-
debate for the ages, I think.
But I was just saying, because he said I fell in love in the holosuite. We've only seen him fall in love in the holosuite one time. So so
We saw him try to fall in love a different time in the holodeck.
well, that's true. It could
That
have
was
been
with an
other
actual
women.
person, right?
It could have been the
Yes.
coconut, whatever.
The Coco no
Our
no.
numbers are
Coco
plummeting
no
right
no.
now. We've got to move on, everybody. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And lastly, was there some kind of or some sort of? I didn't catch one either, Chris. Okay. Melissa Longo, will you please get us started off on the right track? You're like, I was trying to. You stopped me. Please, what do you think of this episode?
I'll try because well, firstly, I have to say there is some lines in this episode that made me bust a gut. Specifically, when Picard says, I look forward to your report, Mr. Broccoli. Oh, because it was so not on purpose. And then when Deanna Troy tells herself to muzzle it. So funny. And Short Riker made me giggle a lot. There's so many things about this episode that I enjoyed. One thing was in the very opening scene when Deanna Troy walks in this beautiful blue dress. I was like, wowza, she looks stunning. So yeah, it may not be cool to say that, but she looks stunning. And then for me, the home run of this episode goes to Geordi. Because it's difficult to work with somebody that you don't like. And I get that, but that's part of life. And I love how he takes Picard's suggestion and Guinan's advice seriously instead of trying to get out of it. I like that he was open to, learning how to coexist with Barclay. It's easy to do. I like that Picard didn't write Barclay off immediately. He may have slipped, had it a slip of the tongue, but I think that was a good move on his part, and it shows great leadership. And I found Barclay to be a bit of a conundrum. I empathized with him a lot. It's difficult for any of us to know how we come across to people in general, and that is amplified when somebody doesn't have confidence or lacks confidence, and shyness can be very debilitating. As somebody who's been that in the past. So I empathize with that. On the flip side, he had some questionable things as far as the holosuite goes. I wonder why I don't know. He obviously doesn't regard his crewmates in very high regard. Just the way he portrays them in the holodeck is, yeah. Anyway, I love Guinan. I love Data 2, and I have a lot more to say, but watch Things Left Unsaid, become a patron to find out what those things are.
Nice. Good stuff. Thank you very much, Melissa F. Longo.
Yes.
Got that one. Jason M. Okun, what is up? How are you? What do you think of this episode?
Well, it's a wonderful episode. I think everybody's having fun, and you can see it. I mean, when the actors are having fun, they're doing their best work, and you can see the joy in Frakes' performance, and certainly LeVar's performance, and Whoopi's is wonderful, and frankly, so is Dwight Schultz. I mean, the part was pretty much written for him, so he can be anything but really good at it and relish, in it. I mean, frankly, this is probably one of the better looking Cliff Bowl episodes that I remember. I mean, there are things here and there, and there's more to be said for sure. But it's certainly an enjoyable hour. It's something you can come back to, and there's a lot of humor and a lot of seriousness. There's obviously a ticking clock, which we must have. But again, it's a very enjoyable hour. And of course, there's more to say.
Thank you very much, Jason M. Okun. I want to hear more about this directorial talk that you know so well and Things Left Unsaid. But before we do that, it's Allyson Leach-Heid here. What is up, Allyson? What did you think of this particular episode?
This episode is a ton of fun to watch, and it does go into, something fairly serious and keep it fun and light all at the same time, both from Barclay's social anxiety, not knowing how to deal with his crewmates, his people he works with, just generally people everywhere. And of course, there is the science thing that he has to help work through. So they show that he is still smart, even though he is not great at dealing with people and maybe didn't pick the best coping mechanism by making all of the bridge officers as maybe not the most flattering characters on the holodeck. But it is still fun and entertaining, and everyone is having a great time. And I'm going to agree with Melissa. I was so happy to see that blue dress on Deanna again. We haven't seen it since The Price, so it was really exciting to see that. And Guinan was in the same color in that scene, and we got her in the great gold. I'm like, yes, keep whipping all of the jewel tones. They're beautiful on her. Makes me happy. And the calling him a clandestine vegetable, Data's line, was probably my favorite, but I think Whoopi gets it in this because actually looking at Geordi like, no, he's a human. Like, if you don't treat a human like you want to be around them, they're not going to want to be around you. So of course he feels that way. And I thought that was a very touching way to portray what was actually happening to this man in this episode without going too heavy-handed about it, and just being like, hey, maybe if you're welcoming, he will come into the space and be a part of the space and not hang back. So that's my favorite. And in the end, I want to know what Program 9 is, the one he wouldn't give them. So that's what I got for this one. Oh, and I love the sparkly gloves. I thought they were fabulous. We need more sparkly gloves in Star Trek.
Michael Jackson. All right, number nine. Howling Mad McGee is here. What do you think of this episode?
Oh my goodness. It is no doubt, of course, one of my favorite episodes ever, or at least certainly one of my most watched episodes. And our introduction to Lieutenant Barclay, someone who, despite this inauspicious introduction of the character, goes on to play a pivotal role in Star Trek Voyager. Given the almost endless possibilities that I'm sure all of us imagined when we first saw the holodeck introduced in Encounter at Farpoint, and of course all the subsequent times it was featured. I'm glad that the writer, Sally Caves, chose to tackle the obvious extreme of what happens when someone prefers to stay there rather than face the real world and become addicted to it. And of course, eventually DS9 takes it a step further, pretty much saying out loud what we were always thinking actually goes on in holodecks and holosuites. There's also obviously some subtext about the dangers of spending too much time like playing video games or watching movies, or really shirking responsibilities to allow any recreational activity to become your primary focus in life. I guess Barclay wasn't in class when they were teaching Aristotle's virtues of moderation at the academy, probably because he was in the holodeck at the time. Up to now, TNG has almost always portrayed the Enterprise crew as a well-oiled machine, with crew members always working hard, excelling at their job, and eager to go above and beyond. So I also appreciate the portrayal of a crew member who doesn't quite fit in, someone who's more of an introvert, who gets nervous and even stutters. I'm sure I'm not the only one here who can relate to Lieutenant Barclay. Of course, I'll save any other thoughts I might have for things left unsaid. As for the memorable quote, boy howdy, because I've seen this episode so many times, I noted more than like 20 quotes that I think are memorable, including a few that I've even incorporated into my own vocabulary, like buttering our bread a little or trying to look comfortable examining a potted plant. But the one I'm going to pick for this episode is the idea of fitting in just repels me.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Dark Lord Chris McGee, aka Howlin' Mad. That's confusing. Anil O. Polat, what's up with you? What'd you think of this one?
So I have mixed feelings. I have 3 points I came down to. I think it's why I have the mixed feelings. The first one is there's okay, if I look at it in the modern sort of, light lens, whatever, I feel like there's a darkness in the beginning to Barclay when he's violent with everybody. And I think the guy is very likable, the actor, right? So like we as the audience like him, but there's sort of a darkness there that in the beginning I'm like, oh, that's kind of right. They could take this a sort of different way. And then and he's being totally inappropriate by replicating like all of everybody he knows. But in Deep Space Nine, they seem to make it a point that that's a pretty bad thing when Quark is trying to get Kira's I guess image in the holosuite. So I guess I sort of felt like that topic could have been dealt with a little bit more seriously, maybe, or whatever. But I did like that the crew was, everybody was like, hey, look, let's, at least Picard and Guinan were like, all right, this guy, like, maybe you just need to approach it differently and try to like include him, which I really liked. I thought that was a really good message. And I liked also that Geordi was on board with it. He was like, all right, let me give this a shot. And Barclay didn't make it super easy on him. And then the last point, again, mixed feeling, is it's hilarious when Picard calls him broccoli, but at the same time, like, I feel like that's a mistake Picard wouldn't make. Just, yeah. Just because he would be, he took it so seriously that, you shouldn't make fun of him and exclude him. So just, yeah, I don't know. But it's a fun episode. I just sort of have mixed feelings on it, I guess.
Thanks very much, Anil O. Palat. I get it. Howling Mad. That's right. That's H.M. Murdoch. We get you now, Chris. Thanks. Greg Kenzo out in Hawaii. What's up, Greg? What did you think of this episode?
What's up? I love this episode, like everybody else. Like Anil, it is a little weird that he recreates everybody, but they do address it. Geordi says he gets holo addiction. He's been there. And in Voyager, he does recreate the whole Voyager cast as well, but it's on Voyager and they're all doing what they would normally do. So I feel like it's less weird than this one. But even this is like, I mean, it does get a little dicey at times, but he's it's pretty innocent. You don't see him doing anything like too bad. The goddess of empathy thing is a little weird, but other than that, he's sword fighting and he's just taking a nap in Beverly's lap. I love that. They're all, sorry, it could be weirder. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
He's just
he's Wesley right here is like infantilized a lot. Like he's like just a kid eating pie. I love that. It's so funny. He's just a kid stuffing his face with pie. Yeah, I think this is a great episode. It definitely shows you that shy people have a lot more to offer than if you kind of embrace them and allow them to flourish. I was shy for like 6 months, probably longer, but with the girls I liked in like when I was 13 and 14, like 8th grade, 9th grade. It was like, and it's so weird because they're a person, but talking to them is like a foreign, it's so foreign to you. And so I kind of understand what Barclay's saying here, but yeah, I grew out of that luckily. But I get why, talking to shy people is important. It'll bring them out of their shell, and they have, like you see in this episode, a lot to contribute. And you'll see Dwight Schultz or I almost said Barclay. You see he has a lot to contribute, even though he's still shy in those Voyager episodes. But we're talking about TNG right now. I think this is a great episode. We'll leave it there.
Agreed. Thanks very much, Greg. Kenzo, Faith Howell, so good to see you. What do you think of this episode? Do you love it?
Overall, yes. Definitely positive associations. Barclay has always been a favorite. Definitely have a different take on him as an adult than I did as a child. As several of you have said, I kind of identified more with him on the insecurity, as a young person and, trying to find myself. As an adult woman, definitely creeper, stay away from me. So it's a little different, but still enjoy the episode. One thing that kind of crossed me a little funny in this one, watching it now, is I feel like the writing was different, especially for Riker and Geordi this time. They just didn't seem like themselves. Like I don't see them in the grand scope of who those characters are. I don't see them behaving this negatively towards any new member of the cast. And I understand, storytelling purposes, somebody has to be there to cause conflict. But I really, really appreciated then Guinan coming in and really being that adult voice, that sort of Starfleet voice to say, well, duh, no wonder he's acting like this. You're making him feel this way. And so she definitely was my favorite of the episode.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Faith Howell. A good point about their personalities being a little different. Kind of remind me of the episode of Lower Decks, where Riker was a little harder on the underlings. So who knows what the situation is there, but it's all a matter of perspective, like the episode says. All right, Amiram is here. What is up? So good to see you. Welcome to the show. What did you think of this one?
I had a hard time with this one. I enjoy it. I enjoy all Star Trek episodes, but specifically here, the holodeck scenes were quite cringy, right? When I watched this, I was trying to fit into a new school. I was a teenager at the time, and I couldn't imagine why Barclay felt like he needed to relieve these fantasies as somebody who was belittling and overbearing and controlling to his crewmates. It just that didn't make sense. That seems almost antisocial, right? If I imagine how I would think about the interactions I want to have with the cool kids, it would be, be one of the gang and hang out with them and not literally and figuratively belittle them, right? So that was a bit hard to watch, and maybe I had a hard time since I really enjoyed Murdoch in A-Team, seeing him portraying quite a different character. That was tough. Tough transition for me. As an adult, I have a teenage daughter who suffering from social anxiety. And I think Allyson also mentioned that. And I think it's quite clear that this is what Barclay is suffering from, right? And there's a beautiful scene in 10 Forward where he sits with Geordi and he basically tells him all these symptoms that he's having. And this is classic social anxiety. And he also says, I just don't think I can cut it here. And I'm thinking about the whole situation, and I think he probably did well on his previous ship on the Zokov, right? He probably was highly functioning, but then he comes into the Enterprise, and it's this, this is the A-Team, this is the flagship. They're all a bunch of alphas, especially Riker. So he's put in a very uncomfortable situation, and the whole social anxiety thing comes out. And except for Guinan, the crew really handles it badly, right? Oh, you're just shy, it'll be fine. And they're not really trying to help him, where today in the 21st century, this is something that's easy to diagnose and treat, either with medication or with therapy or both. So I laughed and I enjoyed the episode, but it kind of comes as a bit of a guilty pleasure.
Excellent. Yeah. Very good stuff. Thank you very much for that, Amiram. Steve in the East Bay, that is Steve Case, aka Joe Bugbuster. What is up? Good to see you again. What do you think of this one?
Oh, I enjoyed it. Certainly some parts were cringeworthy, like most of the holodeck scenes in the Glade were kind of strange. But I thought this one had a very interesting start because we know about the big mystery of what's going on with the ship, but they started with the small mystery in 10 Forward, like something's wrong here, or everything is wrong here. People are not behaving the way they should. And Troy had that gorgeous dress on, which is great, but she doesn't usually talk like that and act like that to other crew members, especially not Barclay. And Barclay is actually standing up to people and drinking, and I half expected him to throw the drink on somebody. So I figured out pretty quick that it was a holodeck simulation, and anyone who recognized it was Barclay would have known that it was a holodeck simulation, because it kind of had to be. I realized this was the first Barclay episode. So people who were actually watching things consecutively through wouldn't have known that, wouldn't have known anything about him or his history. And they would have been probably surprised to find out that, oh yeah, it was just a simulation. Some of the holodeck parts were funny, like the Three Musketeers. Okay, that was kind of cute. And Troy not thinking it was a big deal until she sees herself portrayed as a Greek goddess, and then she didn't think so highly of it either. So it felt kind of slapsticky, more than really entertaining in there, but it was interesting. Overall, I liked the episode. I was feeling Barclay's awkwardness for sure, and the crew's frustration with him. It was predictable from the start, really, that he was going to be the hero. You knew it had to turn out that way. But I'd forgotten how it played out. I hadn't really remembered this episode until we saw the glass with the hole in it. And then I remembered, yeah, this is a systemic problem. I didn't remember what the problem was. But yeah, naturally, disaster was averted only seconds before the Enterprise was torn apart. And yeah, the final scene, of course, which I suspected was also in the holodeck, as he was resigning. And then he shuts down all the programs except for number 9. So that's got to come back at some point.
Or does it? Great stuff.
Or
Thanks very
does it?
much, Steve Case. Yeah, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chuck A. Cool shirt, cool background. Good to see you. What'd you think of this one?
Well, I actually think of this episode of Hollow Pursuits quite a bit because in the last few months I changed my diet and I'm eating a lot more vegetables. which contains broccoli, cauliflower. So every time I want to eat broccoli, I think of this episode, or Barclay at least. I love several things of the episode. I like the comedy, obviously, with the holodeck and the character, like the Shorter Riker and the Three Musketeers. But I also like Riker. He was so upset at Barclay. He kept on getting continually perturbed as the episode went along. And then when he got into the holodeck with the two Deanna Troys, he started laughing. He went from really stern to laughing. And one of the best scenes for me in the episode was when Barclay was talking with Geordi, one-on-one talk with Geordi. I really liked that. Geordi was really frank and was trying to tell him, and then called him by this first name, Reg, which they continually call him Reg throughout the seasons. But I really like this episode. It was one of my favorite episodes of the third season, and probably top 10 or 15 of all TNG episodes. Enjoyed it quite a bit.
Awesome. Agreed. Thank you very much, Chuck A., TNG fanatic. All right, TJ Jackson-Bey is here in Missouri somewhere. It's so good to see you, man. What'd you think of this one?
Good to see you too. I enjoyed this episode too, and I actually like the holodeck scenes because as a student of the mind and in the universal language of mind and dreams and things of that sort, when I see these holodeck scenes, and I have to wonder if the person that wrote them is as familiar or with dreams as I am, because it tells me exactly everything I need to know about Barclay. Just, in the way that he interacts with the people in the holodeck, which is reflected on how he reacts to people outside the holodeck. So, the characters in the holodeck that would represent his outer self or the things that he does in the real world is where he's the most uncomfortable. Those are the people that he's fighting with. Those are the people that he kind of makes into caricatures of themselves. And that's how he feels about his outer self he doesn't feel like that's his real self. He even says it to LaForge at some point, that the people in the holodeck feel more real to him than anything that's outside. He feels that way about himself as well. And he also feels very connected to his inner self. And that's shown in the holodeck by how he interacts with Deanna and Beverly, which would represent, his inner nature self. Yeah, it can look cringeworthy if you're not looking at it like that in the dream language, but in dream language, it makes perfect sense. And that's true for most dreams as well. I also really appreciate, that, as a rule, you can't really change someone else, but the role that Picard and Riker and LaForge have on this ship is that they have to at least, try to help him to be a well contributing member of the crew, and so they take that on at Picard's direction, which I appreciated. Yeah, they could have kicked him off the ship or transferred him or wrote him up or all those things. He's late, but instead they're like, okay, what can we do to help this guy represent the Enterprise well? I think somebody mentioned the Enterprise is this like well-oiled machine. If they send this guy to another ship and he falls apart, that doesn't look good for the Enterprise. So Picard wants to try to handle that situation a different way. Not only that, this is Lieutenant Barclay, so he's not fresh out of the academy. He's not fresh off the boat. He has some accomplishments under his belt, because you don't become a lieutenant in Starfleet, without that. That said, he's also a lower decker. He's a lieutenant. I thought that was pretty cool. I never thought of it that way until we got to show Lower Decks. in the episode Lower Decks, which we hadn't got to in this series yet. So yeah, great episode. I think the way that they worked with Barclay, was reflected, the times that the show was filmed in, but also I think was progressive for the time, because they didn't just throw him away. They wanted to work with him. So I got more. I'll talk about it later.
Nice. Excellent stuff. Lots of good points there. TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri. Thank you for that. Carrie Schwent with the cool purple broccoli behind her. What's up? What'd you think of this one?
I love this episode. I love Barclay. I've been waiting for months to finally get to this episode, and I knew exactly what kind of background I was going to have for it. It was going to be some kind of broccoli, and I had no idea that purple broccoli exists, which happens to be my favorite color, so had to do it. Got a couple of bones to pick with Riker, which I'll get to in things left unsaid. But a couple of fun facts that I found that I really thought were interesting. Wesley in the outfit he's wearing on the holodeck is modeled after an old painting called The Blue Boy. They picked an outfit that looks exactly like the way he is. Although I have no idea why they picked the pie, but that's neither here nor there. Got my
blueberry.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that actually, yeah, I actually think that might work. But I lost my place. Yeah, I definitely relate to Barclay quite a lot. The whole stumbling through your words, being intimidated with people that you know or suspect don't care for you that much, and the way some people talk to you, just it makes you retreat, and you can think in your head all you want about the stuff you want to say to them, but then being actually able to say it completely something else altogether. And I love that Guinan is the one that finally pushes Geordi to do what Picard asked of him, which is to make friends with the guy. And once he does, he realizes a little bit of what he has in common with Barclay, with the holodeck shenanigans, we'll say. But love him so much. Beverly on the holodeck looked beautiful. The hair was fantastic. I loved her on that swing and the beautiful flowy dress. And I have one question that I want people to comment in the comments, and I want all of my friends here to say in things left unsaid. But what do we think program number 9 was? And I want wrong answers only. So if you want to know what we say, go to things left unsaid, and people watching can comment below what they think. But for the limerick for the week is sort of a poetic warning label for the holodeck that was put there after Barclay left the ship. Okay. Holodecks are dreams lived while awake. It's where you go when you just need a break. But don't lose yourself there, even when life is not fair. So when you're at work, you don't make mistakes. There we have it.
Excellent work. Thank you very much, Carrie Schwent. Number 9. Some people know that. The Matt Boardman. What is up? He knows that. What do you think of this episode?
Well, this is always a favorite episode. I mean, we get so many things from it. We get Dwight Schultz. I mean, how freaking cool is this guy? Like, I don't know. He just seems like one of those guys that'd be a lot of fun to hang out with. And he's always fantastic in whatever show, movie you end up seeing him in. And, we've talked about a lot of the points that things that I have thought about this episode. Everybody's kind of touched a little bit on it. But what I find interesting, again, this is, Star Trek is always that morality play, right? And now we've had 2 episodes in a row discussing, to me at least, discussing belonging. In Tin Man, we had Tam Elbran, who didn't feel like he belonged because he was born with, I guess, a disability because he couldn't shut out all the voices like most Beta Zeds do, right? Now we've got Barclay, who is, I don't know, perhaps socially awkward, but he's also a dreamer. And in both cases, it's like, we're being shown a way to how to not exclude people who are different from us, to, like Guinan tells him, she talks about her, what was it, her uncle, who everybody said, stay away, he's a bad influence. And she was like, sign me up for that right now, And so I think that as people, when we see people who maybe are different from us, who might be socially awkward, that those could be some of the coolest people that we could ever interact with in our lives, who could bring meaning and to bring to enrich our own lives. And I just thought there's a musical cue right at the end as Barclay steps off the holodeck, which is the Minstrel Boy, and I'm like, why is it the Minstrel Boy? And so I went to go look for it online to see if somebody had talked about it. Nobody had, but I did find on Memory Alpha, and I thought this was very interesting, that Michael Piller saw himself as Barclay. And I was like, that, and that even his wife Sandra said, oh, it's you, because he's always dreaming. He lives in this land of fantasy. And he's like, I just had the fortune of being able to work in a medium that allows me to explore my fantasies. The other thing that I thought was kind of poignant was that the line about Barclay, I'm the guy who goes in and, I write down things to say before a party, and then I end up sitting in the corner. That was a direct quote from a conversation that he and Ira had, and Ira wrote that into the script. So anyway, that's my time. But I just, like I said, get to know the people that may be sitting over in the corner, get to know the people who are shy, be welcoming. And I think that as you do, you're going to find that there are hidden treasures there.
Great stuff there. The Matt Boardman, everybody knows Hidden Treasures, the album of extra Megadeth songs. Go check that out. It's really cool. Also, in Things Left Unsaid, we should all talk about which writer we see ourselves as. That's a fun one. Jake's final take. Cirroc Lofton, you laughed a lot. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I laughed a lot this episode. Had me rolling. I kind of already like Dwight Schultz as an actor from other work, obviously, so made me kind of lean in his favor watching this episode. But one of the lines that jumped out at me was every time Barclay would say, I was going to do that. I've used that excuse many times, and I felt natural. Like, I was going to do that. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. I was also going to say that one of the things that I think really could be explored, and it's kind of explored in this episode, but not really directly talked about, and that is the idea of the holosuite being used as a tool for mental health. And it's kind of touched upon, and it's done in a self-medicating way in most of these occasions, even when Geordi is, looking for love in that holosuite, it's a self-prescribed kind of therapy for him. He's like, hey, this is what I need. These are the protocols. I'm going to write the program to reflect this, that, and the third. And we see that now again here in Barclay's case, where he's like using the holosuite as a form of therapy, as a coping mechanism for him to be able to handle real life situations. And I think that's a tool that we may see developed in the future when we get into headsets and all this AI and whatnot, when we have our own personal holodeck in our own houses in one day in the future. And in that future, hopefully we'll be able to address mental health and deal with people's mental health using those kinds of formats. So I think it's a subject matter that could be kind of expanded upon a little bit more. They touch upon it. I'm glad that Star Trek does a great job with always kind of tackling mental health to some degree or another. It's always one of the subject matter. I like that about this show. They were sensitive to kind of deal with somebody who was being looked at as an outcast. I like the sensitivity there. I like the methodology of trying to approach solution-based therapy for this person and outreach for this person. I think that's what helps all of us, seeing that people care and them taking steps to show that they care. And lastly, I'm going to bring up again the protocols of the holodeck and how there needs to be a kind of legislation regarding holodeck use. For one, it has to be regulated by, first of all, who can enter in and out without permission. I think that needs to be kind of outlined a little bit. You know, we got a doorbell on a door, so can we put a doorbell on that door? The other thing is, what is the morality of reconstructing other people's images in non-consensual situations, right? And it's like, I didn't consent to have my image licensed in that particular way, and it should be regulated by Starfleet, in my opinion. There should be some kind of legislation or protocol written about that, just as we're seeing AI finding its own resistance and legislation that's being extracted from its advancement and its technology and its application. So when we see deep fake videos and we see people put in compromised situations, those things need to be legislated out, in my opinion. And there needs to be clear rules that are set on what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, in my opinion. So, but great for Star Trek to be dealing with these kinds of issues this far long ago, before this kind of thing wasn't even something that was reality. So that's my final take.
Awesome. Amiram says, at least a knob to hang on the sock on. That's pretty funny. All right, we got to run, everybody. Thank you to Melissa, Jason, Allyson, Chris, McGee, Anil, Greg, Faith, Amiram, Steve, Chuck, TJ, Carrie, and Matt Boardman. For myself, Aaron Eisenberg, Melissa Longo, Cirroc Lofton. I'd like to thank you all for hanging out with us. And until next time, always remember the seventh rule.